titulado New Measures of Age and Aging, o Nuevas Medidas de Edad y Envejecimiento, que nos va a hacer el favor de dictar el profesor Sergei Scherbov. No sé si está bien pronunciado. Oh, good. So it turns out I'm very proficient in Russian. El profesor Scherbov es profesor del International Institute for Applied System Analysis, más conocido como IASA, y es líder del grupo Dinámica Poblacional y Pronóstico del Instituto de Demografía de Viena. Y él se graduó del Instituto de Aviación de Moscú y recibió su doctorado en Teoría de Sistemas, Teoría de Control y Análisis del Sistema del Instituto de Investigación de Estudio de Sistemas de la Academia Rusa de las Ciencias. Y en 1982 participó en el programa de verano de jóvenes científicos en el IASA y desde entonces ha colaborado con el programa de población. Se unió al programa de población en junio de 1987 para trabajar en los temas de las proyecciones de población y desarrollo de software para estudios de población. Y del 93 al 2002 fue investigador y profesor en el Centro de Investigación de la Población de la Universidad de Groningen en Holanda. Durante ese periodo continuó su estrecha colaboración con el programa de población de IASA, y después regresó en IASA en 2002 para colaborar en temas relacionados con la modelación de fenómenos demográficos. Sus intereses de investigación son proyecciones probabilísticas de población, modelos demográficos, software demográfico y procesamiento de datos, la medición de envejecimiento y la modelación de discapacidad. Dr. Scherbov es autor, coautor y coeditor de varios libros y numerosos artículos publicados en revistas profesionales, incluyendo Nature, Science y Population and Development Review. Y bueno, este seminario que nos va a hacer favor de darnos está enmarcado dentro de las celebraciones del 50 aniversario del CEDUA, las cuales tendrán lugar a lo largo de todo el año. Y bueno, en esta ocasión estamos muy contentos por tener al profesor Scherbov hablando de temas que están relacionados, como se darán cuenta, con la investigación del centro desde su surgimiento. Como verán en un momento, su presentación no es solamente sobre envejecimiento, sino sobre proyecciones de población, salud, de alguna manera también sobre curso de vida, y un tema que es bastante cercano a mi corazón, que es la definición de las edades. Además, antes de pasar a la presentación del profesor Scherbov, les quiero explicar rápidamente cuál es la dinámica del seminario. Él tendrá 45 minutos, más o menos, para la presentación. Posteriormente tendremos los comentarios de los doctores Víctor Manuel García Guerrero, Virgilio Partida Bush y César González César González, ya le estoy cambiando el apellido, en ese orden. Y al final tendremos tiempo para una sección de preguntas y respuestas. Vale aclarar de una vez que la presentación y los comentarios serán en inglés, no tenemos traducción simultánea. Y bueno, creo que con eso, y ya para no quitar más tiempo, vamos a pasar a la presentación del profesor Scherbov. So the floor is all yours, and as we talked, you have 40 minutes, give or take, and it's all yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. I didn't understand much with introduction, except science, something population, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yes, I understand. I understand. So thank you very much for having me here. It's an honor, and thank a lot, Sylvia, for having us in this celebration days. So I'm going to talk today about.
I'm sorry. We are recording the session, so we need you to speak a little closer to the.
I can even take it. Can I take it?
No, don't do that.
Like this? That's okay. Okay, it's fine. No, it's comfortable. So I'm going to talk today about some new measures of age and aging. This is going to be my outline. So I first give some brief introduction, then I talk about conventional definition of aging. Then I will introduce some new measures and show how past and future, mostly focused on Europe, but giving some examples also for Mexico. And then I talk a little bit about the most recent generalization of all the work that we did. Basically, it was published just in December in Population Development Review, where we generalized the whole concept of newly looking at age. So, first of all, of course, all of you know how media threatens us with future aging. So you can find things like global aging poses a significant threat to global prosperity. These are just headlines. Aging population poses global challenges, and so on. So before talking about aging, we have first to define what is population aging. And I just use few quotations from UN World Population Aging Report, Encyclopedia. So population aging is the process by which older individuals become a proportionally larger share of the total population. That's definition. Another definition is aging of population is a summary term for shifts in the age distribution towards older ages. That's definition. Now, how do we measure aging? Again, from very prominent sources. The aging population is often measured by increases in the percentage of older people of retirement ages. Or median age, which is the age where exactly half population is below the age, half is higher, is more than higher than this age, is one of the most widely used indicators of aging. So population aging occurs when the median age of the country or region rises. These are just measures, how we measure age. Now, old age dependency ratio is often also used as a measure of aging and used by economists, by politicians, because it is very much related to the burdening of retirement system. Now, the key question, who is old? So that's the most important question. How do we measure the proportion of older people? We need to know who is old. So UN defines older persons as those who are aged 60 years or over. Recently, it's also 65. In most occasions, for example, in Europe, in Western Europe, 65 is considered old because it is also relevant to age, official legal age at retirement, and so on. But whatever we calculate, the boundary is always kept fixed. Whether we looked what was proportion of people, say, above age 65 50 years ago, or when we look in the future, it's always 65, it's fixed. Now, how the world, at least, no, sorry, here's Europe, looks like if we use traditional measures of aging. So basically, I use here the data from our European demographic data sheet that in Wittgenstein Center, we produce once in every 2 years. We do projections for all European countries using our own methodology and calculating also most advanced indicators of fertility and mortality. So that's total population in 2050. As an index, as a starting point, we take 2011. So it's just basically growth. So we see that in most cases, population doesn't grow. With blue area, its population declines. Few countries, because of the migration, there is a growth. The highest growth, something like 1.3, so about 30%, but just mostly because of the migration. Now, this is proportion of people aged 65 plus in 2011. Scale, it's all countries have mostly about 18% of people in this category. This is a group. Well, few countries have it's between 18% and 20%. Now, scale is the same, but time is different. That's 2050. So with proportion of people with age 65 plus in 2050, all area becomes brown or sort of light brown. So And if you look at the number of people, if you take as a one as index 2011, the proportion of people age 65 plus in some places increases almost 5 times. So this, when we use traditional measure of proportion of people above age 65. No, sorry, this is not even proportion, it's population above 65. The same happens with another measure, which is called median age. It comes up in all the countries, and it reaches by 2050 something, many countries, 50 years of age. So half population is below 50, half is above 50. Okay, sorry. Okay, now let's talk about some new measures of aging. First, I will talk about prospective age and prospective median age. So something which corresponds to traditional median age. So the literature of population is aging is exploding, but the concept that we use to analyze aging is still static. So I want to illustrate this. Suppose a man living in Western Europe is going to celebrate his 60th birthday. Is he old? No. Today, this person is probably considered middle-aged, because more than 90% of people do survive until this age, celebrate their 60th birthday. However, 200 years ago, even 150 years ago, because there was not much difference in life expectancy, I say 200 years ago, 150 years ago, less than 25% of men would celebrate their birthday. So indeed, someone at age 60 was considered to be a very old person. And I think there was in Tolstoy, Leo Tolstoy, in one of his novels, he was writing that the room, old man, age 40, entered the room. So even age 40 was considered old. Now, why is a person of the same age considered middle-aged today, and 200 or 150 years ago he was considered old? Because traditional measure of age is a backward-looking measure. It looks only at how many years a person lived, and it's incomplete because it doesn't take into account changes in life expectancy. And young and old are the notions which are relevant to life expectancy. Life expectancy is a common reference point. So in 2 of our papers with my colleague Warren Sanderson, that was in Nature, 2005, and in Science, we introduced, in 2010, we introduced a new forward-looking definition of age, which we called at the time prospective age. So it is important to have a forward-looking measure of age because many decisions that people make depend not only upon how many years people live, but how many years they may expect to live. For example, 100 years ago, it would be very unlikely that someone at age 50 would go to study to university. I had students, when I was teaching some time ago in the University of Groningen, I had students who was age 50. So people are buying now houses when they're age 60, even 70, which was not even conceivable, say 50, 100 years ago. So many decisions that people make depend upon roughly the estimate of how long they are still going to be around. So basically, a prospective age measures how old people are not only from the date of their birth, but also take into account the lengthening of their life expectancy, some sort of standardization. And returning back to our example, someone who is 60-year-old today will resemble a person who was 43-year-old in 200 years ago. And I will show you in a moment how this is calculated. And on the other hand, the person who was 60-year-old, say 150 years ago, 200 years ago, resembles someone who is 74 years today. Essentially, we recognize that people having 2 different ages. One is traditional chronological age. All people who had the same chronological age lived the same number of years. So this is sometimes called retrospective age. In contrast, we introduced the concept of prospective age. So everyone with the same prospective age has the same expected remaining years of life. This is the next one. This prospective age measure requires a standard year. This is a little bit like with constant dollar and inflation. We usually measure prices, not just in the current dollars in current currency, but we fixed, say, in constant dollars, the price is like that. Because it doesn't make sense because of the inflation. Similar thing is here. And actually, after we first published this work, the term inflation of age appeared. Because, it's not exactly the same, but there is something similar. So price indexes are used in economics to transfer these prices. In demography, we use life tables to do the same. So that's why when we're talking about this prospective age, we need some standard year, and we'll measure the age of person in this as a reference point. We'll use the standard year. So, for example, all people who have the same prospective age, 40, have the same remaining life expectancy as a 40-year-old person in the standard year. It's just very similar to standard, to constant dollar. So this is, I hope this illustration will make it very clear. So in 1900, females at age 40 had remaining life expectancy 27.4 years. Now, in 1980, women at age 52 had remaining life expectancy 27.4 years. So we may say that then prospective age of women at age 52 in 1980 is 40 years. If we take as a standard 1900. So basically, all those people have the same prospective age. Depending what is selected as a standard, the age will be different. So the age depends upon the selected standard. But what would be very important, the dynamics. So selecting the standard only shifts up and down sort of the whole curve of dynamics. And in a moment, we will see these pictures. For example, these are isolines. For example, let's look at this line, 40. So these are people at age 40 in 2000. Now, their remaining life expectancy is something. This something is exactly the remaining life expectancy of people close to age 30 in 1950. So the same life expectancy. So all those people, ages here, have the same remaining life expectancy. So that's sort of justification for very well-known saying that 40s is new 30s. So that's exactly what you see. 40s is something like, if you put 40, it will be exactly 30. So people have, in these 50 years, their remaining life expectancy is the same for 40-year-old and for 30-year-old. Similar pictures would be for most other countries with high life expectancy. So you see, like 70-year-old had remaining life expectancy in 2000, the same as, say, 64-year-old in 1950. But for some countries, it's different. Like in countries of Eastern Europe, for example, in Russia, people are becoming older. So the previous picture showed you that people are actually becoming younger because their remaining life expectancy corresponds to much younger ages in the past. Here, it's different because people say in 2000, those who were 40-year-old had the same remaining life expectancy as almost 50-year-old or 47-year-old just 40 years ago. So people are really becoming older. Okay, having these definitions of age, prospective age, we can apply this concept to median age. And exactly the same, median age is age, so we can use some standard year and apply this technique to see how this prospective median age, we call it, will change historically, was changing historically. Here we have first picture, Switzerland. So median age, this traditional median age from 1976. This is prospective median age. So if you standardize it in the way I showed you, take into account the life expectancy increase, the picture is completely different. People are becoming younger. Populations are becoming younger instead of becoming older. they overlap, they intercept in the year of standard. So here I selected 1980 as a standard. So that's why if other standard would be selected, dynamic would be the same, but it would be shifted up or down. This is England and Wales. That's median age, that's prospective median age. No aging. That's historical data. Even Japan, you see I put on one graph. So in 1947, it has the same prospective median age as it is now. It has now. It became younger for some time, then now it's the same. While traditional median age is coming up. Now let's look at the projections. So this is median age for most of European countries. It's definitely coming up. This is prospective median age. It's virtually constant, doesn't change. So this is averaged. I just averaged all the countries for median age and for prospective median age. You see, picture is very different. So with prospective median age, population eventually are becoming even younger. This is Austria. This is actually calculated for Mexico a few days ago. So here, okay, it comes, I think that it's simply below 20 was median age, something like 18. But you see here, I mean, here I use UN projections. All previous pictures that I showed projections, we used our own projections because we think that United Nations is a little bit pessimistic about future developments of life expectancy. In many of their projections, life expectancy saturates. And this would have a very strong effect on these measures. So here I used just United Nations projections because we didn't make separate projections for Mexico. So that's, we see the 10 years of difference. Okay, even if you take 2050, it's more than, it's almost 10 years, 8 years difference. So this is median age, this is prospective median age. Now, that was how we introduced the measure of age, and we looked at the measure which was called median age, which is traditional measure which shows us whether aging occurs or not. Now let's look at the other very popular measure, proportion of older people. So as again, traditionally it's measured 65 plus. Now, this is 65 plus historical from 1900 for most OECD countries, many OECD countries with high life expectancy. We see proportion 65 plus. If we summarize, it's just coming up. And in 2010, it's something like, I don't know, 17%. Now let's look how life expectancy changed in the same countries at age 65. See, this life expectancy at age 65, all those countries, it was coming up. If I average this, what I see here, I see that somewhere in the 70s, remaining life expectancy at age 65 was around 15 years in the 70s. Let's remember that. So in the 70s, remaining life expectancy was around 15 years. Now, that's what I said. So age 65 in the 70s, people were considered old. And that was the age at retirement in many European countries, 65, so they were considered old. Now, from 70s, life expectancy at age 65 increased by more than 5 years. You see? It increased, now it's 20. But we are still considering, people are healthier, but we are still considering them old at age 65. Now, let's assume that like in the 70s, someone who has remaining life expectancy 15 years or less is old. Just let's assume. Now, what, like, we considered that in the 70s, why not to consider it now? So basically, let's those are old whose remaining life expectancy is 15 years or less. Now, first let's look how this 15 years or less was developing. So this is age at which life expectancy is 15 years and less. So of course in the 70s it's 65. Today it's 70. Some countries even more. So this is on average, this is averaged. So we see again, this is something like 65 would correspond to 70s. That's what we have now. Now, So let's, as I said, assume that someone is old when the remaining life expectancy is 15 years of age. And let's now see, with this definition of old, how would proportion of these old people change? So these are those countries, OECD countries. It doesn't change. Actually, that's when you aggregate it, average it. There is no change. So these are projections now. So these are projections for the same, these are for European countries. This is 65 plus. This is proportion of people with remaining life expectancy 15 years or less. These are projections for 50 years ahead. So there is slight aging, but really, really very, very slight. Now this is example for Mexico. So again, using UN projections, this is proportion age 65. So by 2100, it's something like 30%. But if you look at a proportion of people with remaining life expectancy 15, it's considerably less. It's twice less. So it's a completely different picture. Now, basically, this concept of remaining life expectancy 15 years or less is very similar to this prospective age when we don't define simply the standard. But the idea is the same. Now let's look how old age dependency ratio changes. Also, we are often threatened by old age dependency. This is old age dependency ratio for, again, for European countries. That's our own projections from our data sheet. That's traditional old age dependency ratio. And this is prospective old age dependency ratio. It doesn't change. And this is Mexico. So this is what we have. But again, according to UN projections, if we would use more optimistic scenario on life expectancy, we would have even more striking difference. So this is prospective. This is old age dependency ratio. This is prospective old age dependency ratio. Prospective old age dependency ratio is when this threshold of who is old is moving. So in this case, it's 15 years or less remaining life expectancy. So in a very recent paper, which just was published 1 month ago with my colleague Warren Sanders, we introduced more general approach, which we call characteristic approach to the measurement of population aging. And there is, we basically conceptualize the whole paradigm of population aging. So we call it characteristic approach. And basically, this prospective age things, it's just one, it just falls under this definition. Because what we are looking at this prospective age thing, we're looking age where people have the constant remaining life expectancy, right? And then we look how this dynamics of age, how dynamic of this age when life expectancy is 15 years or less changes. But we can do it with anything else. We can look what is mortality rate. Mortality rate, fixed at age 65. At what age we have the same mortality rate? So we fix characteristics and see what age would deliver us these characteristics in time. We can do this with many other things. We can do this with disability things. We can do this with any characteristics. Now, for example, we are doing this with hand grip strength. Hand grip strength happens to be a very good predictor, maybe some of you know that, of health, even of mortality outcome, and even of mental health outcome. There's a lot of literature now in this field. And most of the surveys, they do collect now information on hand grip strength for older people. HRS, Share, ELSA, and I think Mexican survey you also have. Yes, you also have it, hand grip strength. Yes. So it's because it's really good predictor. So what we are doing, what we did now, we had a paper now submitted, where we compare this hand grip strength of older people, fixed strength, and how it changes. So we see how people are becoming younger in certain respect. So here I have this just example first for we call it alpha ages. For example, here we have a picture where we have 3 types of alpha ages. We call them alpha ages, depending upon which characteristics is used. So first one is traditional. That would be this prospective age, because fixed characteristics is remaining life expectancy. Then there is a fixed characteristics mortality rate. And then there is, we call it life course ratio. Tx, we look at this age, divided by T20. in life table. So basically, this one, MX, there is some literature which shows this MX mortality rate is some sort of proxy for disability. And this could be used for definition of pension age, because person years above age 65, above some age divided by people who survive, by person years when people start this sort of working ages. So this how it looks for Japan. The highest, so basically we fixed in 1965 all of life expectancy, remaining life expectancy. That's one characteristic, that green one. We fixed mortality rate, that's the highest characteristic. And we fixed this ratio. And then we see at which age in the future we have those characteristics. And of course they happen at much higher ages. So this shows us, I mean, so in terms of remaining life expectancy, mortality rate, or this ratio, those people at those ages are equivalent to the person at age 65 in 1965. And this is the case for Mexico. I also calculated a few days ago. So that's what you have. Again, here is based on UN projections. Oh, okay. But anyway, the top line is that's MX. The lowest line is this ratio, and the green line is this conventional, which I already explained you about. Now, okay, that's basically it. So the major idea is that, of course, population aging is coming, and it will be a source of many challenges, but we should not exaggerate those challenges just with incorrect measurements. People are changing. People characteristics are changing. And if someone at fixed age, 65, people are very different. People are much stronger, much healthier, and live much longer. So we cannot consider someone old at age 65. So we have to use broader set of measures in order to more correctly characterize the future of aging and also the past. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Scherbov, for this very interesting presentation. And this is making a lot of noise. Okay. That happens when someone knows a lot of technology, and we have someone who studied in aerodynamics school before anything else. And there we go. And this was mine, I think. Well, I was just saying that thank you for your presentation, which was really fascinating and opens a lot of questions, at least it did for me. And I'll be using this later. And well, I hope we'll certainly have time for questions, but just some of the things that came to my mind is how to use perspective, this notion of prospective age for other things other than measuring age. For example, how to measure prospective age of time spent in employment or unemployment, once you keep that constant, or prospective age of time used in other tasks, and or just and how well if different ages have different implications for different politics or policies and such, but we can certainly have time to discuss that later. And we have now your official commenters or discussants. And the first of which will be Víctor Manuel García Guerrero, who studied actuarial sciences and later did a Master of Engineer in Operations Research and Advanced Econometrics at the National University of Mexico. And he holds a PhD in Population Studies by this very center. And he has also been an assistant professor at FLACSO-México and a part-time professor at the Autonomous Technological Institute of Mexico and the National University. He has also been an advisor and consultant of demographic methods for the National Population Council and other consulting firms and banks. He was a member of the board of the Mexican Society of Demography in the period 2011-2013, and he's currently an assistant professor and coordinator of the master program in demography in the Center of Demographic, Urban and Environmental Studies at el Colegio de Mexico. His research interests include mathematical demography, population estimates, population forecasting, and the related population policies. And I'm sure he'll have very interesting comments.
Who knows? Thank you very much, Estela. Well, and thank you, Professor Scherbov, for this very enlightening presentation. In this presentation, Professor Scherbov shows us an innovative and creative way to measure aging. Usually, we learn in our courses of demographic analysis that population aging is a process characterized by a gradual increase in the proportion of elder or the increase in the median age. This means that a population always will be considered age when 50% of its people reaches a certain age, usually 65 years. Under this framework, the aging process is static in time. A few months ago, I participated in a meeting where I presented, among other things, the theoretical methodological basis of demography and how its link with other disciplines form the sociodemography, the biodemography, and the applied demography. Much of my arguments were based on the reflection I heard from Jim Popel. In such presentation, I showed that demography was based in two main pillars, mathematics and statistics. Without delivering further into these details, a colleague from the public told me that in his view, this scheme needed to incorporate the art of prospective or foresight. With that, he said, he allowed to see demographics as a dynamic process, and we could link better with a changing world. In that sense, Sergei's presentation incorporates the foresight approach using one of the main analytical tools in demography, the life table. Thus, he proposes a change of paradigm which allows to see the aging process as a dynamic process. Until now, the dynamic approach were just incorporated in the sociological studies of aging. I mean, with the concept of social age of one population. But they didn't propose a consistent measure of that. About social aging, I remember that my grandmother was an aged person when she was 50 years old. She felt elder, and all my family treated her like that. When my mother was 50 years old, she told me, I am a granny, and I am old now, but I don't feel old. Now she is 68 years old, and she doesn't feel old yet. So in such context, Sergei proposes 4 new indexes: the prospective age, the proportion of population at ages with life expectancy below 15 years, and the prospective old age dependency ratio. The first can be summarized with the sentence, the 40 are the new 30s, and it allows to compare populations according to the remaining lifetime at each age. The fourth measure is just the relationship between the prospective age and the median age of population. The second measure allows us determining what population proportion is below certain threshold of life expectancy a long time. And the third is focused in comparing such population with that. Starts its labor life at certain age, between age 50 and 20, more or less. And that has a life expectancy upper than the predetermined threshold. These two measures state a better concept of dependency and vulnerability in a macro level, which are almost impossible to see without a prospective approach. Nevertheless, could it be possible to think also about dynamic thresholds? About these measures, I wonder if all the life tables used have to come from the same source. I mean, do the life tables have to use the same methodology? Talking about the methodology, how about the assumptions related with life table calculation? Do that could bias the final results? How to choose the benchmark or the standard life table? I remember that in economics, the benchmark year is chosen in function of the stability of the macroeconomic variables. So here we don't have too much variance in the life expectancy. So I am just wondering about how to choose it, because we don't have this stresses in the life expectancy. So, and talking about the future, how about the assumptions of projected mortality? I mean, how the assumptions in the projected mortality affect the final results, and how to test these measures in order to assess its accuracy. And finally, just to taking this presentation, I would like to ask if it could be possible to isolate the effect of migration in this kind of analysis. So yeah, that's all my comments and reflections that this project, this broad project you have, that's all I have. Thank you.
Is it okay if we keep, we'll listen to all the comments and...
Okay, I don't forget.
Okay, then we'll have give you a chance to respond right now.
Because I think it would be more
dynamic. Okay, that's perfectly fine.
Talking about dynamics.
Yes. Okay, dynamic threshold, first question. Actually, this is dynamic threshold because the threshold of who is old is moving. Okay. So that's why this whole approach is of dynamic threshold. The threshold is moving depending upon what is remaining life expectancy. Benchmark your, how to choose. I think that the whole idea is that we are, I mean, as I showed, and I think I also commented that it doesn't matter which benchmark your is used. It just shifts up or down the whole curve. But what is important, the dynamics. So the path. So it will not change the dynamics. So it will be going a little bit higher, but then will decline. So it will decline. Dynamics will not change. So it is arbitrary which year you select, basically. In the year which you select, in case of median age, the median age and prospective median age, they just overcross. That's it. Assumptions or projections. Yes, this is very important thing, and that's what I said exactly about the UN projections. So, of course, but assumptions in our projections always affect all our projections. So if we have some assumptions about fertility, migration, that all affects all our outcomes. So of course it affects very strongly these measures. And as I said, that we think that United Nations is a bit skeptic about future developments of life expectancy. For example, if you look at the OECD countries, for the last 60 years, there is no reason, I mean, all countries, if you just average them or look at them separately, life expectancy grows 2.1 years per decade. So there is no immediate reason to consider that they will be slowing down of this growth. There is no reason. But you end with all the previous projections, would always assume that there is slowing down. So I mean, the result will be different, of course, if you have different assumptions. But for example, for Mexico, I showed you assumptions, which are more or less pessimistic, but still you will still have difference. Only if your life expectancy stopped growing at all, then, I mean, you may get just the prospective measures will converge to traditional measures. But this is not at least foreseeable in the future, in the foreseeable future. Yeah. How to assess precision? This is probably the same. Huh? Okay, how about the selecting of the standard? One of the, precision. Okay, how to assess precision? Actually, in our paper published in Demographic Research in 2008 or 9, we did 3 ways of proving, because for demographers, important issue is, now, these are period measures. What cohort measures would be the same? Yeah. And we had the whole paper on that, where we proved analytically, on historical data, and the simulations, that the results are very similar. So, and that gives a very strong sort of support, because otherwise we don't know if we would have different results. We don't know how people make their decisions in terms of, cohort life table, period life table, and that's a mess, because of course they differ. But this age that we eventually get, this prospective age, it doesn't depend, almost doesn't depend upon whether you use period life tables or cohort life tables. And that gives a very strong sort of support that, I mean, this is sort of also some sort of precision checking. About selecting of the standard, I think the good thing is that we can use this standard. We can select standard, we can compare different countries, how they age. We can select the standard. For example, I did some, just for myself, not tests, but some calculations of, say, assuming that, let's take as a standard Japanese life table. And we can see how all countries of the world will be ranked according to their new measures of aging compared to Japan. So we can select one standard, not necessarily Japan, we can select any other standard, but at least we can somehow rank all the countries. And we can say, okay, 60-year-old in these countries, what age would they correspond to the standard? And migration, could it affect? Of course it will affect, because for different measures, it will affect. How to test sensitivity? I would just run with migration, without migration, calculate these measures. And then I see what is the difference. Of course, migration will affect, but it depends upon, of course, which migration ages, upon age composition of migrants. It will also affect. Yeah,
looks like he has his own. But you guess fine, because our next discussant is precisely Professor Virgilio Partida, who has a bachelor's degree in actuarial sciences from the National University of Mexico. He shares that with Victor, and a master's degree from El Colegio de Mexico, so he has some common ground with most of us, and a PhD in sociology from the National University in Mexico. He is the author of more than 20 books and more than 100 articles in scientific reviews and chapters in books, and he's a member of the Population Association of America and the Mexican Demographic Society. He was the president of the Mexican Demographic Society from 1988 to 1990, and the general director of the Demographic Research and Forecasting Department at the Mexican National Population Council, and he is now working at the Latin American Faculty of Social Science as a professor researcher. And I must say he is being very shy because he's an expert in population forecast and demographic methods, and very well known for that. And we give him the word now.
Thank you very much, Estela. Thank you for your kindly invitation to comment Dr. Scherbov's work. Dr. Scherbov's presentation and papers are really fascinating. Concepts such as perspective age, adjusted median age for life expectancy, and standardized median life expectancy are useful and novel to better understand the aging population process. However, they are not easy to interpret, and I believe some time is required in order to incorporate them to the standard demographic bibliography, mainly the standardized median life table. The perspective proposed by Sanderson and Scherbov clearly shows that under the new focus, the growth on aging is slower than with traditional measurement. The cost of health services in all age must be lower, and if they were measured with the chronological age, and the life annuities buyers must consider better their retirement age, because they have a long, big life expectancy, and the payment for the pension is lower because the money is fixed at the age of retirement. I believe that the concept of reminding life expectancy will be more precise if cohort life tables are used instead of period life tables. There is no problem with calculating the reminding cohort life expectancy, but we work with mortality forecastings, not with the past that is generally difficult to reconstruct. Just for example, if I want to reconstruct the mortality cohort from 1902, now it's very difficult because we have a revolution between 19 to 1921. And our information, it's no good. But instead of the projections, we have all the information disponible. Okay. If the results on the standardized median life tables are very close using cohort and period life tables, as Dr. says in a document, I believe it's because we have been cautious when forecasting mortality, assuming a very low decline. It is similar, the expectancy at age 65 in 2050. And the cohort, they are very close. And I suppose it's very slow, the decline of mortality from 2050 to 2100, because they are very close. I believe it's, sorry. If we use a remanded life table of period life tables, life expectancy of period life tables, we are implicitly assuming remains stable mortality from the reference year, okay? Which is not totally consistent with the supposed progressive health improvements. If I suppose there are many improvements, the mortality decline and the life table at age 65 or 60 in 2050, it's bigger by cohort life table than period life table. The illustration will be clearer if, instead of only considering median projections, we will use include for confidence intervals from the probabilistic forecast. To use the probabilistic forecast in the Nature paper, no? Because that way we would be able to observe the little difference between using period life tables and cohort life tables. Really, the difference is not significant, statistically significantly different, and really we can use period instead of cohort. I really did enjoy the presentation of the documents that Dr. Scherbov kindly sent to us. Now I'm very happy because I'm 60 now and I'm no more an old man. Now I am a middle man. Thank you very much.
So basic question was, and basic remark was still about cohort and period life tables. So you said that they would be more or less close only in case if there is very low decline. But you see, there will be, if we take cohort or period life table and look at the second indicator, like remaining life expectancy. That's true. That we may have very strong differences if we use period and cohort life tables under strong decline in mortality. But that's not the case of prospective age. Prospective age, that's what we proved in this paper. Prospective age, the most would be exactly the same whether we use period life table or cohort life table if we have constant change in life expectancy. Say 1 year per decade, 2 years per decade, 3 years per decade, 5 years per decade, we'll have the same results. They have to be constant. The only thing which distorts this, just shock events like Spanish flu. If you have sudden impact, then it will distort, and you saw this on the picture, then it will distort this correspondence. Otherwise, you would get exactly the same prospective age, whether you use period life table or cohort life table. And actually, in our papers devoted to these probabilistic projections, we even build these probabilistic ranges of prospective ages. So that's what I think response is. So that's why we are so much for prospective age, because it really doesn't depend upon which life table. If it would have been dependent, we would be in big trouble, because we don't know what to use. And it's not dependent, especially under conditions of constant change in life expectancy. Increase or decline, but it should be constant. If it's not constant, it's more or less sort of jumping, it's still okay. It's still very close. It is only not close when you have really some sort of extreme events. Thank you for your comment.
And our last discussant is Dr. Cesar González, who's a researcher at the National Institute of Geriatry in Mexico. He also has a master's in demography from el Colegio de Mexico. He has been a visiting researcher at el Colegio de la Frontera Norte. His master's is in demography from el Colegio de la Frontera Norte. His PhD is from el Colegio de Mexico, and he's been a visiting scholar at the WHO, PAHO, Collaborating Center on Aging and Health at the University of Texas Medical Branch. And he has collaborated on many research projects on aging, and on which he's an expert, including demography of the elderly, implications for development and welfare, and the analysis of the Mexican household survey of older adults. His current research focuses on health consequences of aging, including economic and residential changes due to health deterioration, migration, and healthcare expenditures. And
thank you.
The floor is yours. Thank you, Cesar.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. First of all, I want to thank to Victor García and Estela Rivero for the invitation to comment Professor Scherbov's presentation. I'm very glad to be part of this session. The meaningfulness of chronological age is questioned in many ways today. Why we need to know the real challenge of aging, what aging means. Certainly, we need new ways to measure the population aging in a context of increasing longevity. Most often, people are categorized in one of three ways: chronological age, functional status, or life stage. Dr. Scherbov proposed an alternative way, prospective age. That means to take the remaining life expectancy, around 10 or 15 years before death, to define old age. He and his colleagues are assuming that in these years, the traditional signs of aging start to show. For example, the presence of chronic diseases, functional dependence, cognitive impairment, retirement of economic activity, among others. In the literature, there are identified three broad age categories which distinguishes seniors: the young old, who are healthy, fit, and reasonably affluent; the middle old, who are starting to slow down and have less money and resources; and the frail old, who are very elderly and have special social and physical needs. Maybe it will be the 15 years of the remaining life expectancy that Professor Scherbov is proposing to calculate prospective age. Chronological age, as the defining marker of being old, is being eroded. Health or functional status are increasingly replacing age as a more appropriate benchmark for behavior or rights. And that's why the prospective age becomes so pertinent. Although it is true that the prospective age compared with chronological age increase precision to identify people who have an older profile, it is also true that it has its own difficulties in terms of comparison across modern societies. The assumption is that the last 10 or 15 years of life means the same for elderly population in different countries or even within a country. Coming back to aging population, in Mexico, today, 1 in 10 people are aged 60 years and over. In just 30 years, it will be around 1 in 4 or 5, depending on the accuracy of the projections. That's an incredible change for our society, and we must see this change as a positive one. Demographic aging is a success story for public health policies and for socioeconomic development. For many years, the efforts goes in that direction. We have succeeded reducing infant mortality, maternal mortality, the lethality of chronic diseases, and thereby most people survive to older ages. And the question is, was not this what we are looking for? We are looking for aging to live more years, and so why are so worried about this demographic aging? I think this divergence, it is related to the conception of what it means to be old. We are thinking that all those who reach 60 or 65 years automatically have greater needs, they are retiring from the labor market, are sicker, will demand more resources, and therefore will not be beneficially either socially or economically, particularly in this context of Mexico, where inequality and economic constraints with a very fast aging process occurring, and here I have to quote using the chronological age, not the prospective age, for the fast aging process, is occurring. Even when the prospective age indicates that the burden on terms of the size of the aging population, measured in whatever we want, will not be so high, the changes in perceptions, ideas, living arrangements, intergenerational solidarity, among other factors of cultural and social nature, will be the one that complicate the situation. The idea behind the measurements is to identify the population that at certain age needs long-term health, economic, and family care. With Professor Ham, in 2007, we published an article on functionality and health. We construct a typology of aging in Mexico, trying to classify the population through health status and functional capacity, as well as risk factors that affect health. With this, we propose a better approach to capture the heterogeneity of the elderly population. And this led us to identify vulnerable groups. We use chronic diseases, difficulty with activities of daily living, cognitive impairment, self-report health status, lifestyle risk based on tobacco and alcohol consumption, and regular exercise. All of these characteristics associated with the aged population. Then we define 4 types of aging: ideal, active, habitual, and pathologic. The results shows that almost 2 of 3 have an active aging, and less than 1 has an ideal aging. Around 8% of the elderly population in Mexico has a pathological aging. This should be our priority group. They are prone to illness and intensive use of healthcare services. So establishing aging through health status and risk factors are just another threshold, an edge that identifies aging types and a better understanding of the situation for the population 60 or 65 years and older. In a parallel point of view, and taking into account the perception of people, the Pew Research Center last week released a document named Attitudes About Aging, a Global Perspective in a Rapidly Graying World. The Japanese are worried and the Americans aren't. This document shows the attitudes toward aging around the world. In Mexico, 30% of the interviewed describe aging as a major problem for the country. In Japan, the percentage is 87, in the United States 26, in Russia 42%, and in Germany 55%. The Pew Research survey also finds a wide divergence in people's confidence that they will have an adequate standard of living in their old age. Confidence is lower in Japan with 30%, and Russia with 20% of people that are confident about their old age standard of living. In the United States it's 63%, in Germany 60%, and in Mexico 41% thinks that they will have an adequate standard of living in old age. With these measures, we confirm that we are in the same direction, using different approaches, but with the same idea. Aging population should be measured not only with chronological age. The typology and the Pew Research survey give some additional insights to understand population aging. And with the prospective age, some ideas came to my mind to estimate with better precision the real burden of this population group. But let me go back to your presentation, Dr. Scherbov, and the prospective age. I have some questions to encourage this discussion. The number one. Age at which remaining life expectancy is 50 years goes from 59 years from Sierra Leone to 73 years in Japan. And my question is, are these two populations comparable? What happens with countries where the age at which remaining life expectancy is below 60 years? And I found that at least 15 countries have these characteristics. What prospective age tells us in this context? The second one, if you are proposing to change the numerator of the equation, what about the denominator? In childhood or youth, doesn't apply the same way of thinking. I mean, if you propose the remaining years of life to measure aging population, you should move the line in the infant or young age to a certain level of survivorship. I mean, the old 20 years are the new 30s, so if you kept the lower bound constant, you are assuming that childhood or youth is not moving, but aging population are. The last one, if you think that the upper bound of the remaining life expectancy is moving, you are using 20 years plus to measure the old age dependency ratio. And if you are saying that the new 60s are the old 50s, I think the new 30s are the old 20s, so you should move the lower bound. Do I explain?
You mean the last picture?
Yeah.
Last picture?
Yes.
The very last picture, when I said this ratio, T.
Yeah, T20. And I have an example. In Mexico, more young population are delaying their age at which they leave home parents. We have some individuals living at 30 in their home parents when 30 or 40 years ago, they are living in their early 20s. And three, what happens in countries where the disparities in life expectancy are too high and almost of the size you are proposing to define population aging through prospective age? For example, in the United States, in 2010, I think the life expectancy at age 50 is 36 years for a foreign-born Hispanic woman and 25 years for a non-Hispanic black man. This is 11 years of difference. And on some of your papers, because I read your papers, not only the presentation, you are analyzing the pension system and the retirement age. What are the implications in such diverse scenario within the country? We have, at least United States have measures for life expectancy for racial groups. So the differences are wide. And what happens when we try to apply the same measure to a pension system, maybe? And finally, no matter how we adjust, one thing is for sure. Aging will change the Mexican and global scenario. We have started to see the impact of this process, and it will be intensified in the next 35 years. Each way of expressing age has advantages and disadvantages, and the decision to use any of them should be based on the goals of examining age. Keep in mind that whatever age we use, we are applying socially constructed labels and definitions. We are trying to find new measures of aging, all of them perfectible, but with higher precision, identifying in a better way the elderly population and its characteristics. At the National Institute of Geriatrics in Mexico, we are sure that the demographic aging is not a trouble. Not all the persons aged 60 years and older are dependents. The majority has good levels of functionality and lives independently. We must remember that population aging is in large part the result of a positive force as economies develop. The task ahead is to figure out how to make the right adjustments. Thank you for your attention. That's are my questions.
Until I remember, I'll start from your last question about, you was saying that in the US you have people with different ethnicities having different, yes, but you are not defining pension age for different ethnicities differently, right? Right. You are not defining pension age for people smoking and non-smoking. Yeah. So you see, why would we have it here? Of course we can calculate prospective age for any ethnicity. For smokers, non-smokers, also possible. I mean, we can try to calculate, but usually you would have something for on the population level. So, I mean, otherwise you can go, otherwise I think there are some politically incorrect things when you start, separating people by different, smoking habits, drinking habits, ethnicity, and so on. So that's why we have just some standard retirement age. So that's why I use aggregate population. And I compare it with the standard measures. But of course, everything can be calculated for smokers, for example, if we have data. But it doesn't mean that smokers should retire earlier because they live less. I think it would be not easy, to make such a policy. Or people who are, because there are also other things, like people having different jobs. Some jobs are more risky jobs. It's a little bit different area. But it can be calculated, of course, for all different ethnicities. That's what we actually even did sometimes on a regional level. You mentioned that 15 years, it may be not necessarily 15 years. Yes, many things happen with health in the last years, it's compression. We just selected 15 years because, as I said, in the 60s, there's one picture like that. I showed it. Also, Norman Ryder, some time ago, he was just writing somewhere in one of his papers that we should not consider people old. Maybe we should consider them old at 15. There is 15 years of age left, 10 years of age left. So it's not, fixed. Important is that we have a threshold which is moving. So that's the most important. Now, you had a question about what we do with countries where life expectancy is less than 60 years. So what? Life expectancy at age 60 would be can be still 15 years, can be even 20 years. Because if you have very high infant mortality, it doesn't mean that you have very low remaining life expectancy at the age of 60. So you see, it can be for any country calculated. The question was why we selected 20 years and then moving threshold with this life course ratio, which we call. 20 years because, that's where we usually consider working ages. We do not touch these younger ages because you see then people usually at these ages, they are more or less healthy. They are more or less, those measures are more valid for people really in high ages. At age 20, in most of the countries, people have about the same sort of health. That's why we selected 20. And usually 20, that's what is considered the starting of your working career. So people are not, of course people are starting their career later because they study and so on, but some age you have to select. We can select, of course, 25. But the results would be more or less similar because that relates to the year of starting of your career, of starting your working life. While threshold It's when sometimes you are forced to retire because you are considered to be old. Like in many European countries, you can be civil servant above age 65. I think one of the very important issues is the parallel between prospective age and healthy prospective age. That's what I had many types of questions, because many times I had this question. Because it is not only important how long people live, but whether people are healthy. And I think that this is a very interesting question, and actually I received now the advanced grant from European Research Council for 5 years, 2 million euros, just to work on that. To figure out, because it's very difficult. We don't really know what health is. In most cases, it's subjective. So if you look at subjective characteristic of health, if you look at European countries, these are like different planets. You see, because it's very much culturally defined. So, and it also, many people abuse the system. They consider themselves, like, when I only came to the Netherlands, it was 1991, for 15 million population of the Netherlands, 1 million of people were disabled. Total population, 15 million, so including children, old people, 1 million was disabled because the system was very relaxing. It allowed people just, okay, I am overstressed, okay, you are disabled. You see, so, and then people misuse this. So, and that's why, and of course, if he has survey, yes, yes, but he may also cheat, you know, with this. Okay.
On your left or on your right?
So, but no. Of course, that's why having subjective measures of health, it's extremely difficult. We try to make these things. That's why now within this project, we are moving to biomarkers, because biomarkers are much more objective things. And even hand grip already shows that you have the differences. So, but that's the whole project will be about that, because we are going to study cognitive things, because we can also have constant characteristics like in cognitive. We can see what cognitive age today would corresponds to, say, 10 years ago. So whether people are cognitively the same or they are becoming younger. It's health. It's many other characteristics of people. So that's this project which just started. So there's a lot of things here to study. What was about Sierra Leone? I forgot. You asked something about Sierra Leone?
If we can compare Sierra Leone to Japan in terms of the last 15 years of the remaining life, because the conditions are too different.
I think we can compare it. We can select Japan as a standard. But then I think that a person at age 60 in Sierra Leone, there are some people who survive at age 60, will be equivalent to someone who is 100 years old in Japan, in terms of their remaining life expectancy. So it can still be compared.
In terms of the remaining life
yes.
years?
But remaining life expectancy, okay, that's one of the characteristics. But I translated it into prospective age. So okay. The person, correspondence of ages.
Thank you.
So it's still possible.
Well, thank you, Cesar. And we have just about 30 minutes for questions. And not to overwhelm you, what if we take questions from 3 to 3 in sets of 3, so you don't forget. And we'll ask you to formulate your questions in English, and if possible, if not, well, translate. So, any takers? Rigel. We need the mic there, so.
Okay. ¿Sí se escucha? Sí. I've been reading your papers and the concept about current life and nominal life, and thinking in the 40s as a new 30s, since the life remaining expectancy has increased between cohorts. Would you think it's necessary to begin to think in a new measuring for age in a life course perspective? how long should be considered the period of young and adulthood?
That's a very good question, because that's also part of this new project. That's because decisions that we make in our life, I mean, those timing of those decisions often changes. But the idea is to link those decisions, the timing of those decisions in terms of age, to prospective age measures. Again, prospective age measures, that was the start, because as I said, the most recent paper, we call it just characteristics measures of age. So any characteristic can be a reference point. So the idea is that maybe many of the timing decisions we are making are constant in terms of these prospective measures. And in fact, one of the participants, because I'm teaching also in European doctoral school in demography, he tried to use prospective age for fertility. And it happens that it doesn't change much. It's almost constant. So you can use this for life course events, and some of them may be really invariant in time. So, and then if it is like that, then you have a very strong predictive power, because you project life expectancy, and you may have, you may predict to a certain extent the life course events, timing of them.
Any others? Otros? No? Silvia.
So I have another question that has also to do with life course events. So usually when you're measuring the transition to adulthood from a life course perspective, you have this set of events, no? When somebody has left school, has started working, has left the parental home, has formed a union, has a first child, you can consider that person an adult, no? So I understand the perspective on functionality and health, but I'm trying to do the match between what you are presenting and its implication in terms of the working age, no? Because, for example, you move your estimates, or you presented the estimates on the old dependence ratio, but we also know that the age at retirement in Austria, the median age is still 57. So you do have you do have a mismatch there in terms of how what you're presenting does not correspond what's going on in terms of the working, the life expectancy in the labor market, and which has an implication in terms of pensions, but who also has an implication in the way we think about working. I mean, I don't have the data, but employability gets harder as you get older. No? So for somebody who is 55 and loses his or her job, it's more complicated to get a new job. No? So what you're presenting should have an impact on the way that we think also on this part. So I don't know if you can comment on that.
I'll try. Yes, this is true. I mean, and this is paradox. Like with, I think, also case of Austria, if you take 1960s, then I think it's called effective age at retirement, that average age of people who retire in this year was something like 67. Today it's below 60, while life expectancy increased for a considerable number of years. So 2 years per decade, 50 years, 10 years. So, and what we see, for example, in France, when they try to increase pension age, you have immediately, you know, the strikes, people very unhappy. And you know, several times during presentations, I was approached by people from media, and they would say, okay, why this is not widely, you know, known to general public? Because usually public thinks that they need to increase retirement age due to financial problems of the government, due to mistakes their politicians are making. But many things should be explained, because people, when they start understanding that the burden of their retirement really is on the shoulders of their children, they may start thinking slightly different. Of course, if you need to, I mean, it's now we are moving to a little bit different area, but this retirement thing, of course you need to educate people, because it's often that people at age 55, they used to get their education very, very long ago, and they are not on the market partly because they are not, you know, their knowledge is not enough. So of course, I'm not talking here about employment. But of course, I mean, if you need to increase age at retirement, and this prospective age gives you a wonderful, scientifically justified way of seeing what this age should be. So in one of our papers, we suggested that once we have this, say, additional 10 years of life expectancy, so half of it should go to retirement, half should go to working ages. And this gives you a perfect path. For example, Germany is now following exactly this path. But of course, once age of retirement is coming up, you have to educate people. So this should be that's very much follows what Wolfgang was saying. So it's not only, and actually, you may increase people's education, so it may even change a little bit. With age, even at high ages, people may still get additional education. That's a key thing. That's what I could answer.
Does anyone else, ¿alguien más tiene una pregunta?
Aunque sea en español, si es muy corta, nosotros se la podemos traducir.
¿No? Yo tengo una pregunta, a question. And I mentioned, well, several, but I'll start with one. And in a sense, I am concerned about, as I mentioned before, the way you define aging, and in a sense, not you, but everyone defines aging, and your prospective age, the age is, in a sense, a chronological definition. So, and you mentioned already that when you are interested in incorporating health or disability, and that can turn into something different. That, in a sense, can be the quality of life prospective age, one can think. My point, and I mentioned before, well, if you start doing these, well, I'll start with my two questions. These prospective ages for different aging indicators, not only, let's say, not only for chronological age, but for the age at which you get certain diseases, or the age in which you retired, or at the age at which you have an empty nest. Do you think could that be a better definition of age, or not? Could that be useful in the sense of defining age more broadly, or? Yeah. Yeah.
I think that, I mean, what we are looking at, there are characteristics of people. I'm not sure that the age at marriage is a characteristic of people. It's some outcome of their characteristics. If someone is, so, I mean, these are, I think, different type of things. So what we are, the major idea is that what we look at the people at the same characteristic. How this characteristic in time, what age would correspond to the same fixed characteristic. Okay. That's the major approach. Why we measure it in terms of age, that's a very good question, because the whole idea was to measure it through age. Because if you tell someone is behaving as if a person who has remaining life expectancy, say 17 years, it doesn't tell you much. But if you tell someone is behaving like a person at age 55, it tells you much more, because you know how usually people at age 55 behave. So that's why, and it's much easier to interpret it in terms of age. That's why we return using this sort of manipulations to age. because age is much more understandable. So you know that, okay, that people, I mean, you may have an idea how people behave at different ages. So that's the key thing. If you say that, for example, mortality rate at age 60 is 30% high or lower, it doesn't tell. Most of the people doesn't tell anything. It doesn't tell anything to politicians. But age is the most easiest sort of understandable thing. That's why we try to use everything everywhere age.
¿Alguien más? ¿No?
¿No? Bueno, pues les agradecemos. We want to thank you for your wonderful presentation. I think it leaves us with many good ideas. And we want to thank Victor for organizing the seminar. And we want to leave it there. Y les quiero recordar, como dije en un principio, que esta es parte de las celebraciones del 50 aniversario del centro. Les recuerdo que el próximo evento es la tercera sesión de diálogos y reflexiones sobre población, ciudad y medio ambiente, que será el 28 de febrero, con el tema de uso del tiempo en la investigación social. Y bueno, no sé si tenemos otros avisos. ¿Tú quieres decir algo, verdad?
No sé si Silvia quisiera decir algo para cerrar el evento, los eventos de los invitados.
Pues sí. Ya.
Well, I just want to say two things. First, I would like to thank also our discussants who are also alumni and who were also formed here with us in the center, and we're happy to have them here with us to discuss. The second thing I would like to say, I think it's very good to have like all these discussions. In today's session, we have like this new way of thinking, it's a new paradigm around how we use age, which is one of our main inputs in demographic analysis. And again, thanks Wolfgang Dutz and Sergei Scherbov for your visit, and I hope we continue this dialogue in the future. Thank you.